know
Oh, yes.
anything like that.
Your favorite parish.
There you go. Yeah.
If
Just
you're,
open it to all things.
yeah. There's a whole like, wait, I was interested in the fact that you said Colorado. Is it because it's like square?
Yeah, 'cause I love that kind of four grouping that's kind of in the Midwest area. That's just
Uh-huh.
very nice, like square, 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 square. But then also shout out to Oklahoma for being the little, the frying pan or like I guess the pot maybe, because it's got the little handle and then it's got the yeah.
There used to be a pizza place in New York when I was in grad school, and it was called Two Boots. And it was Louisiana and Italy, like on their
Oh,
logo
nice.
or their sign or whatever. And it was like Cajun sausage on pizza.
That sounds
Like
really
it
good.
was, yeah, it was an interesting place. All right, people are rolling in. We've got 1 minute until we start. Jen says
Yeah.
South Carolina, shaped like a slice of pizza, and she lives in the upper crust. I love it.
Nice.
Thanks, Jen. All right, Seth is going to start recording and we are going to kick it off. Today is the last day of Newsletter Fest, and we've had so much fun this week, and I am looking forward to today. We've got some exciting speakers lined up. So first, we're starting off. This session is Sonal Mandalia. Did I say it correctly?
Nailed
Sonal?
it. Nailed it.
I feel excited. All right, y'all, I just turned off notifications to Slack because I had forgotten to do that. Things were coming in. So this presentation is all about how to position your newsletter to attract high value sponsorships, right? So super excited about that. Then later at 12:30, we have Blurred Lines, where we have a panel of newsletter creators who are going to I think Marianne Slater of Managing Editor Magazine is the panel host, and we have people from Trello. Their newsletter to their users is very much like an editorial newsletter, because they produce so much content on their blog that they run like a media group. And then we have Ryan from 6 a.m. City, Jenny Rothenberg, formerly director of growth at Morning Brew, and she's now at what I think is called The Batch. It's like a bachelorette travel company. So excited to hear from her. And then Sarah Ebner, who until recently was the newsletter editor at The Telegraph, and she is now going to, you might have to help me with the name of that, Seth.
It's the Financial Times, right?
Financial Times of London, yes. So they're all going to talk about what they borrow from the other side of the fence. So marketers and journalists. I'm a former journalist who's now a marketer, so this one speaks close to my heart. And then end of the day, we're having a closing ceremony, and we will be announcing the winners of some of the contests that we've had going on, and also just celebrating the end of Newsletter Fest. So if you haven't yet, we do have a Slack community, and for those who like slacking and connecting, this is great. It kind of replaces what you get at a in-person conference, which is the ability to directly connect with people in your industry. So we don't want to be the only people talking at you. We know that there are people who are attending this event and in that Slack who have expertise to yield. And so what we have set up is some introductions channel, a place where you can drop a link to your latest newsletter, some event discussion channels as well that we may morph into, like newsletter questions or newsletter resources or things like that. So lots of stuff going on over in the Slack, and that is it. Like today is the last day. I'm wearing orange for Curated today to remind you that Curated brought you this newsletter festival. It's the first one. It's the MVP. We want your feedback and to understand how we can do it again next year, but better. Like if people are interested, there seems to be some demand. So let us know in the chat if you've been enjoying this. And I am about to hand it over to Sonal, who's going to screen share and let us know how we can attract high value sponsorships. Thank you for joining us today, Sonal.
Thank you. Yeah, super excited to be here and excited to get started. So without further ado, I will kick off. So a little bit about me. I'm Sonal Mandalia, as Ashley correctly said. So I head up the advertiser side at Paved, currently working with a bunch of all of these different clients, including Noom, Uber, eBay, Jamf, etc. So huge, big players out there. A little bit about Pave. So we are an email advertising platform. Essentially, we help advertisers scale their campaigns and publishers secure more sponsorships. So just a little bit of framing here. So we know that brands spend millions of dollars on Google and Facebook and Twitter on an annual basis. And at that pace, newsletters at this moment, they just can't match it. And we know that advertisers have no capacity to do these one-off newsletters. So we help advertisers spend hundreds on different newsletters just to make sure the process is succinct and efficient for them. So like we said, this talk is going to help you position your newsletter to land lucrative sponsorships with all of the different brands I've mentioned and more. Hopefully a lot of these insights will be useful and you'll gain some useful insight and actionable points at the end. So this is what we'll be running throughout the presentation. I won't read it line by line, but we'll be going into more depth with these as we go through. So to kick off, know your audience. So regardless if you're using newsletter advertising, social, SEO, the audience is the most crucial part to any advertising marketing campaign. Therefore, you guys need to know exactly who your audience is. How do you know who your audience is? How do you get to know them? Where do you find this data? All these questions. Here are some useful tips. So at Paved, we suggest that you send out a regular survey. This could be on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, however many times you want to send it, it's entirely up to you. But as you'll see, if we look at this example over here, you'll be able to kind of get this numerical data, and it's super useful when you kind of go to sharing this information with advertisers. We'll touch on this a bit later. In addition to this, you can also get direct feedback on a daily basis or weekly basis, however often you send your newsletter. Right at the bottom, you can include these little thumbs up, thumbs down emojis. I've seen this across a fair few different newsletters at the moment. It's becoming increasingly popular. I'm sure like the more publishers we have on here, maybe it's something you're already doing and seeing the success. But if you don't want to have the little emojis, you can always kind of go back and have a different email address that shares the feedback. So essentially getting this temperature check on your subscribers will allow you to really get an in-depth knowledge about exactly who your subscribers are and what their interest is. So I was having a conversation with a client this week, and randomly they decided to say this, and I thought it'd be a great quote to include in the presentation. So just to really hone it in, I'll read it out. So even if the performance stats are strong, if it's not the right audience, we won't pull the trigger. What this says to me is that if your open rates are 60%, like they're super high, your CTRs are like out of the water, your reach is crazy high, but you don't have the right audience, any good advertiser isn't going to give you any time of day. So just making sure that your audience is strong and you know them, you know exactly who they are. So you've been able to grab this data. How are you going to present it? So something that I touched on earlier was basically how to relay this information back to advertisers. These are two examples, one B2B and B2C. As you can see, every section, apart from interests, has a numerical value attached to it. This is super easy for advertisers just to quickly like check this, like, oh yes, like, okay, they have 10% Canadian. Is this going to be a good fit? Yes or no? 80% Fortune 500. Perfect. That's exactly who we want to target. Giving this presenting the data in this fashion allows them to make the quick decision, but also look how clear and easy it is. So if you like this template, this is something that we do at Paved. So I would recommend kind of checking it out and making sure that you're always sharing this information in this digestible way. Finally, niche. Niche or niche, as I got told earlier this week. However you say it, it's the same thing. Niche audiences are super, super valuable and super high interest at the moment to these large advertisers. For example, Uber right now is looking for logistical professions in the manufacturing space. Very niche, very granular, but it's definitely out there. And with these niche and granular audiences, you can actually try and compete with like Google, the Facebook, Twitter, because they're obviously up against their targeting capabilities. Just to kind of hone this in a bit for smaller publishers, you might not think you have a chance of these larger advertisers, but don't be fooled. So performance, this graph shows like performance versus subscriber count. So performance up here, subscriber range down here. And as you can see, we're seeing a trend that the lower your subscriber count, the better your performance stats are. And then it kind of gradually goes down a little bit. This isn't to say that people with higher subscriber counts have bad performance. It's just interesting to see that, you know, even if you do have a small audience, it doesn't mean that you don't have a chance. If anything, you actually have a leg up, and it's something that you can kind of really pull through and shine when you're sharing that data about your audience. This is just an example of a larger audience, a larger advertiser working with a really smaller publisher. So here they had 27 subscribers, but they killed the open rate. They had a good, decent CTR and a decent CPC as well. So just really showing you like exactly like, doesn't matter if you're the smallest fish in the pond, the larger advertisers can still look at you if you're presenting the right information. Just a few key action items to take away from this. So start surveying your subscribers. You have all these people to talk to, and you talk to them on a daily basis, weekly, whatever. Make sure you're getting the information back from them, because it's insanely valuable to these larger advertisers. Making sure that that information is digestible. So feel free to kind of copy those formats I shared with you. Happy to kind of, when we share the deck, or if you have questions at the end or whatever, happy to share those templates. But using those will allow you to share the information in a way that's easy for people to understand and make the quick decision. And finally, focus on niche. Like I said, the larger players are looking for those tiny little bubbles. So if you have that little bubble, shout about it. Cool. So then we have native ads versus banner ads. So I'm pretty sure everyone high level knows what native ads versus what banner ads are, but just to kind of really hone it in. So native ads are ads designed to look and feel like editorial content. Banner ads are image only ads, ad blocks aimed to gain your attention. By no means am I saying banner ads are bad, but the aim to gain your attention is where it starts and where it stops with banner ads. They're great for brand awareness, but you're only going to get to that point. Native ads, though, you're able to really like get into the nitty gritty of the advertiser's product, and it's hugely beneficial for your subscribers. I'll tell you why in a sec. Just want to kind of highlight this little star here. What I found really interesting when I was making this presentation is native ads reduce ad fatigue, but banner ads are the ones that cause it. Something interesting, just to, if you take nothing else from that, take that. But I think it's just a kind of interesting little line to head in. So take it as you will. So how does this relate back to publishers and advertisers? Quality. As a publisher, you have probably worked so hard to maintain your tone, the design, the flow, the topics, the interests, etc. of your newsletter. So don't let that go to waste with almost bad banner ads, but actually embrace native ads because they can really support the content, and essentially you're monetizing your content in a way. So make sure it's quality. On the advertiser side, they are looking for the space to share this information. They don't want to have like a small little space on the end, and so if you're offering that, guaranteed they'll flock to you. So just to put this in perspective, here is an example of an ad that we recently did with Noom. So up top, you'll see that they had a logo placement here. And just because it was so small, it was almost invisible, but still you had the hyperlink. I just put a box around it. We had just one small line up top, a few bits of content, and then this is the main ad. If you didn't see the fact it was sponsored right up top, which obviously we all know is a legal requirement, if you didn't know, you probably would just read it and think, oh, awesome, I've just learned something about Noom. Great, and maybe I'll check it out. It's just a very interesting way of seeing how an ad can be related to. And just if you're interested in implementing this, I've actually put the creative specs, so something to think about. As an example, here's a banner ad. It's right at the bottom of the newsletter, and it literally is what we were talking about earlier, that it is just the image and it starts and stops there. There's not that much information. It's not that engaging, especially if it's filled up by the noise up here. It's not the best, and you can really see the difference in it because of the creative specs. It's like very marginal. So good and bad. Fine, and then number 2, educate. Native ads allow you to share like educational content with your subscribers. Ultimately, newsletters are supposed to provide some sort of news or some sort of update, and advertisers are wanting to do that. So here is an example of a campaign we ran with Owler and eBay. So eBay, again, similar to the Noom one, the logo is up top. And then they also have a slightly smaller section, but still this is all native. And then a section here about eBay and their services. Super niche, super sweet. And it still retains the educational topic. So a good example there. Performs. So I know personally that native ads perform way better than banner ads. How to convince you? Here are 2 stats that I found that really do rein it in on my head. If not, I hope it does yours. So 53% of consumers look at native ads more than display ads. That's like huge. And then next we have native ads increase purchase intent by an average of 18%. If I'm an advertiser and I'm seeing this stat, I'm going to want to invest in native ads and not banner ads. So something to keep in mind. Few action items from this section. So give generous real estate. Like I said, this is what advertisers are looking for. And if you're only offering a banner ad, it's going to be a lot harder to sell your newsletter placements than if you're being a bit more generous with your content. And then secondly, making sure the placement is prominent. Don't put it at the bottom of the newsletter. It's probably not going to get the highest engagement. Equally, like how we saw up here, what Owler did was having the logo presented by, it's not in your face, and then having the section here. It doesn't take up the whole newsletter, but it takes up enough that it's still gives the advertiser the ability to share quality and educational content. Efficiency and ease. A lot of advertisers are looking for convenience. So let's think about social. When they're running social campaigns, they're not talking to multiple individual publishers, Facebook groups, or even if they're on Twitter, they're not working with like individual people there. No, they're using technology. They're using one platform. So why should newsletters be any different? This is something that we also hear a lot of from our advertisers that come to us. It's like, I don't have the internal resources to spend my budget. So big advertisers have these budgets, but because of the processes that it takes working with one newsletter, it's hard. Like they don't have the time or day to spend on this. So this is something that is super important for you to nail and get right in order to get into bed, if for lack of a better term, with these larger advertisers. bundles? How can you become more efficient with your offering? So something that is really interesting with this is if you do sponsored posts, how can you bundle that into a sponsored email as well? Can you use it as a distribution point? Can you leverage it against a dedicated email? Whatever you offer, it's actually really valuable for an advertiser to have almost a 2-in-1, letting multiple touch points with maybe it's the same / different audience, but you're able to really expand and reconnect with you as a newsletter creator, but also with your wider audience if it's your subscriber list or your the traffic coming to your website. Trust. Advertisers, yes, we know they have these large budgets. We know that they want to spend them and they want it to be efficient. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure you're being you can build the trust, because if they're not gonna, if they don't think you're trustworthy, they're not gonna work with you. Same with the subscriber count. If you're not sharing information that isn't relevant to them, they're not gonna trust your newsletter anymore. How can you rectify this? Making sure all of your performance stats are accurate, making sure that your audience metrics are valid. Keeping all these little housekeeping tools can really help build trust with your audience, if nothing else. A few key takeaways from this talk. So remember your data. I'm sure everyone knows how powerful data is, but in the newsletter world, it's almost imperative to get right. So remember to showcase your audience data. Remember to get the little nitty-gritty, tiny details that maybe you think not many people want, but when Uber comes around and they want like pet food because they've gone into pet food and they only want golden retrievers, and you have a few pieces of data that highlights that you have golden retriever owners, bingo, you're in. Number 2, native ads. So like I said, advertisers want the space. They want to be able to really like shine through their product, but they also want to be respectful. So I feel like it's a bit of both with that. Efficiency. Like we said, they don't have the time or day to go through one by one, share the creative, upload, efficient, be savvy with it. How can you do this? You can join a marketplace. So at Paved, we have hundreds of advertisers coming to our site looking for newsletters like yours to advertise in. They want to do it. This also increases your brand awareness. Like think about how many, like I've just said, so many people, so many eyeballs in one place, you're bound to be picked up. You can also obviously increase your presence on Twitter, social, but if you want action from an advertiser thinking, oh yes, these guys look like they're definitely going to be a right fit, this is the place to go. Run on autopilot. What does that mean? So Paved, we are a platform where advertisers and publishers run their campaigns through one place. That means you don't have to email your creative specs or email to get the creative from the advertiser, or you have to email them the draft or feedback, etc. No, it's all hosted in one place. Makes the process a whole lot more efficient on both sides. And like I said, that's exactly what advertisers want. And I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to keep emailing people on a day-to-day basis. And then ultimately doing this, you'll receive larger advertisers come through your sponsorship. You're able to get larger advertisers to sponsor your newsletter. If you're interested in learning more, you're welcome to sign up for free. But if you have any questions about any points, happy to take them now, or happy to kind of connect at a later date. But yes, thank you for listening.
All right, I'm coming off mute. We do have some questions in the Q&A. I will ask one from an anonymous attendee. And then Jen, if you are interested in coming on, just let us know. If you don't want to, let us know and I'll ask it for you. So the anonymous question, longtime newsletter subscriber, budding creator. As someone new, what is the smallest size these brands might work with? Should there be some audience size I should get to before I start looking into this stuff?
It's a really good question. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule about how big you should be, but I think if your data paints the picture that you have X percentage of an audience and an advertiser is looking for, go for it. Make sure that you're in the limelight with them. Typically, we kind of work with people about 10K subscribers above. That doesn't mean anyone less is going to fall through the cracks.
Great. So Jen is going to ask via audio. Come on down, Jen.
Sorry, I'm getting her unmuted. I lost my my window here. Okay. All right. Now we've allowed her to talk. Okay, go for it, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. This is great. I just have two questions. One is, I've been working for a while to try to determine how to find, I know you have a service. I'm more getting started with really launching, but just any tips on how to determine advertisers that are looking for your niche. So, I mean, mine specifically is a newsletter. It's for artists and it's about like creative processes. So, you know, I know that maybe folks like Adobe and stuff like that, visual and performing artists. So it just seems like not a niche that is openly courted a lot. I think, I'm not sure. I don't know though. So any tips about how to figure that out if your niche is maybe not one that's like obviously lots of ads directed at them from larger advertisers, like the ones you work with?
Got it. So it's actually interesting that that's your niche, because I could already think of one or two that would be interested in working with you.
Cool.
So I would say yeah, no. So with that, I would actually say take Uber as my example for instance. Like, you think of Uber, why would they be looking for logistical and manufacturing? So in some answers you don't know. I would recommend like getting yourself on a marketplace, but also I find Twitter is a great source for all of this. Making sure kind of you're following these brands as well, making sure you're keeping tabs about if they're increasing their spend. Like, okay, you know that they're interested in newsletters, like how can you sweep in? And even just getting in front of them on social is a great way to kind of get your face out there.
So, but to ask, so like if I can see they're spending more, but I can't tell exactly who they're trying to target, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess, are there some cues that we can use to determine who they're talking to, unless they're not, you know, unless the ad's pretty obvious itself, like maybe where they're showing up?
No, it's a good question. I would say like, even if you can get in front of them based on like, oh, I saw you were spending this, like I'm actually working on this, or I have a small audience that doesn't maybe relate to something that they're working on right now, it can be a good way for you just to get your foot in the door, just explaining a bit about who you are. That can help.
Okay, so you're just saying maybe if they're not already looking for your audience, you can just get that visibility and explain to them why your audience is worthwhile for them.
Yeah, definitely. And also because if you think about when you're applying for a job and they're like, we'll put you on file, you kind of look at it like that as well. Like, oh, great. Okay. Like when we're wanting to target that audience, you know exactly the person to come to.
Got it. Thank you.
So,
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Jen. We appreciate you coming on. I've got another anonymous question. What newsletter topics are popular with advertisers right now?
ooh, good question. I would honestly say it depends on the advertiser themselves. And I guess when they're talking about topics, you mean like categories, like lifestyle, tech, like business, etc. I presume. If I'll go with that presumption, I would say like more and more, we're seeing more and more B2B advertisers come on board with us. They're kind of tapping into that trade world and really focusing in on like job titles. So I would say tech business. If you're a tech and business newsletter, like let us know, because that is popular on our platform.
Excellent. Okay, I am asking Seth if he will drop it in the chat. He has a link to Paved for anyone who is interested in checking out what they do to connect advertisers with newsletters. Another anonymous question. Any insight on how to better reach out and align with agencies that manage the larger blue chip brand budgets?
Good question. So we actually work with a lot of agencies, and since I've come on board, we've had an increase of agencies of all different, like B2B, B2C, all sorts coming our way. So I would say like it's probably unlikely that unless you're super big, like Hustle and Morning Brew, that an agency is going to take the time and resources to Google you. You can't really Google audience demographics. So my answer is actually just to kind of come onto a platform, because we're already talking to them. So if we know who you are and they know who we are, then we're going to help you with that conversation with them.
Awesome. All right, Amanda, are you interested in coming on to ask your question? And I think, Seth, that you can now downgrade Jen from panelist to attendee. It was wonderful having you on the panel board, Jen. And let's see if Amanda would like to come on, because it looks like she has 2 questions. Sure, she says sure. All right. It's like the 11 o'clock crowd is always like, yeah, I'll be on video or audio. And then the like later in the afternoon, people are like, oh, no. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for organizing this. So we have a pretty large overall subscriber list, around 800,000, but we employ a suppression strategy on top of that. So that inherently increases our open rate, but overall our open rate, factoring in the bigger list size, is smaller. So what do you recommend is better to report?
Can you just repeat a bit of that? My internet cut out slightly. Really sorry.
Yeah, so high level, we have a large list, but we use a suppression strategy. So our open rate is higher when we use the suppression strategy, but is lower overall, factoring in the bigger list size. What do you think is better to report to attract bigger advertisers? The bigger list size with the lower open rate, or the smaller list size with the higher open rate?
Good question. I would say, as long as you're being truthful and honest, the smaller list size and larger open rate could actually work to your advantage. Like if your smaller list is actually niche and engaged, and that's reflecting in the performance stats, then I would say that matters more so to an advertiser, especially if they're looking for a performance focused campaign. I would go with that. If they're looking for brand awareness, then try with the larger ones. But at first, I would go with the smaller one.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you. And then the other question is, you talked about bundles. Is there a way on Pave to show these bundles? Because I know there's a way to show your different product offerings, but I've never really seen the sort of bundling option.
Yes, so this is something that we'll be adding to our UX later this year. But right now, it's more of a conversational that our publisher team will approach you if we know that an advertiser is interested in, let's say, your newsletter. And we know that we can kind of upsell them a little bit with you guys in mind, because your audience is a right fit. So right now, it's not on the feature, but it will be. But if we know that you're on our platform and we know you're open to it, then that's something we can push through for you.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
All right. Next, we have Paul. Any interest in Seth? Have you been asking people and you want to interrupt me and tell me I'm behind?
I haven't gotten a message out to Paul yet, but when we get to Rob, then Rob is good to go.
Okay.
So Paul, if you'd like to come on, just let us know.
He said, no camera, sorry. Okay, I'll ask yours and then we'll keep moving on. Okay, so he asks, do you offer a done-for-you service to obtain sponsor placements? I have a large email list, but I don't have time to do all the reaching out myself.
Did you say a done for you?
Yes. Like, do you have a done for you service to obtain sponsor placements? I have a large email list, but I don't have time to do all the reaching out myself.
So I'm confused about the done for you, but I think he just means like, will you do it for us? Is
Yes, I think that is
that
right.
question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So any larger advertiser that we work with typically falls in our managed account service. So what that means is we generate different proposals for them based on the audience, like the targeting audience that they want to reach to. With that in mind, we include different newsletters that match their audience in our proposal. So we're the ones pitching your audience, your newsletter on your behalf. So yes. Oh, he says not to an advertiser.
As a publisher, not an advertiser. So I think that's what she's answering to, though, is that as the newsletter publisher, if you are on paved platform, that they then try to match you with their advertisers, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. And then he just said like, no, it's not. So we do like everything that's like you're able to download Curated, like the whole process is self-served on the publisher side. Mm-hmm. If that's what you're asking, Paul.
Says, I signed up for Paved years ago, but haven't been able to do anything with it. Okay, so I think maybe that was a self-service thing. That sounds like possibly a conversation worth like continuing after. I do have like a few more questions asked, but maybe we can pop that in the chat. All right, so Chris is asking, do ad platforms expect newsletters to be exclusive to their service?
Good question. Right now, we don't. However, we do operate on a non-circumvent. So if you're working with us through Uber, you're unable to kind of reach out to Uber directly.
Okay. And then I have two more anonymous questions in the Q&A. And I know that Seth is trying to keep up with the ones that came in through the chat. They're a lot harder for me to keep up with. So that's why I haven't gotten to them yet. But I understand there are some people ready to come up after. The next two are like anonymous. So I would be asking them anyway. So everyone else, if you asked one in the chat, start thinking about whether you want to come on and ask. What do you think is the most common job title of purchasers of advertising, i.e., is that demand generation, marketing director, etc.?
For us, growth marketer is the most popular.
Okay. And that is almost synonymous with demand gen these days.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's at some point, like, titles just like go into a mix, and if it says marketing, then yeah, you could be in the shop.
There's a great article from the marketer hire team where it was like, this really means this, but with a little of this. Like it was a funny breakdown of what it is. All right. Are unique per issue opens a better reported metric than list size for prospective advertisers when charging on CPM?
Interesting. So yes and no. Yes, from the accuracy standpoint, if you're actually saying like, this is my list, but these are how many like opens I get, I guess it's more accurate. But you can't guarantee that same amount will always open, that you'll guarantee that open rate across the board. So I would say use the higher list at the front, and then we always share like the open rate, so the advertiser will see of that your average open rate, and that will help you determine what will help them determine if it's a good fit.
Awesome. Okay, Seth, I'm going to kind of hand it over to you to help me navigate the people or
sure. Yeah. I'm going to bring on Rob. Okay. I'm promoting him to panelist, so he should be joining in a second to ask his question that he had dropped in the chat. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Cool, thanks. So I've got a blog focused on travel in Japan. I'm not a travel agent, but I have a lot around the world and do a weekly travel bulletin newsletter to them. And I'm trying to get interest in working with people that would be interested in putting some sort of banner ads or sponsored content in those weekly newsletters. So I was thinking perhaps sort of local or national travel agencies that are in Japan. And I wondered if you've worked with any travel brands and have any sort of advice or tips on how to approach them or how best to suggest they could benefit from that opportunity.
So we've not worked with any travel brands specific to Japan. We do have some, not necessarily advertisers interested in the travel industry, but interested in travel newsletters. In terms of reaching out, Paved is a great option for you. But I would also say, like, with this, I would offer native ads versus banner ads, as I very clearly discussed in the chat. But I think if you can offer that, you'll be able to reach out to more and get a bit more interest in the blog. How big is the blog right now?
And what sort of metrics? Sorry.
So metrics against.
Sorry, what? I'm not sure what you're asking for in terms of size. Or is it
Oh,
audience?
sorry. Yeah, in terms of size, in list size. I'm sorry.
Oh, list size. My mailing list is just over 3,000.
Oh, nice. Yes, it's pretty decent, and it's all made up of kind of travel enthusiasts, right?
Yeah, it's focused purely on Japan. So it's a global audience. The primary territory is United States. But I even have a third territory. Second is UK. Third is actually Japan. So there's a lot of non-Japanese who use my blog to learn about exploring travel in Japan.
Interesting. Well, hey, if I hear of anyone, I'll definitely let you know. But we at the moment haven't worked with specific travel agents at this moment in time.
Okay. The other aspect of it was really sort of brand or lifestyle affinity brands to work with. So they might not, and obviously there's the global ones like airlines, that sort of thing, that are kind of generic and not specific to Japan.
So you're trying to get in front of those generic brands as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Got it. I mean, similar to, I think a question before, it's more like increase your brand awareness, like make sure you're getting in front of those travel brands or like general lifestyle brands in general. I don't know if you are active on like Twitter, Facebook. There's so many different travel Facebook groups you could join. But I definitely think a marketplace is a good place to start.
Thanks.
No problem.
Awesome. Okay, so there's a question in the chat from Stacy. One was she was hoping that we could get the slide deck shared. I don't know if you can easily share that link in the chat, but I definitely will be sending out assets after Newsletter Fest. The fastest way to get them will probably be to join the Slack, where we've been dropping things as they come, just kind of like willy-nilly, but there will be an organized email. And what I've got to do is, because I wanted to be very much like along the lines of Curated stance, which is don't badger people who don't opt into something, right? Like let them opt in and receive what they've asked to receive. And so we know that we have people who registered for sessions who are not on the Newsletter Fest newsletter list. They are in their own like Zoom registrant list. So we will be doing the job of like reconciling all of that next week and making sure that people who are not on the Zoom Newsletter Fest list but came to or registered for an event get an email so they don't feel like we didn't address their need as well. So it could be, we do have like 8 other brands at Simple Focus Software, and we've given Curated all of our love this week. So we will be playing catch up next week and sending things as we can. But for sure, I'll get it dropped in the Slack as soon as I can. And I think Sonal might be grabbing the link right now, or launch. I think it'll need to be converted to PDF.
Do you want the?
You know what? Maybe we'll convert it to PDF.
Share it in the Slack.
Okay.
Yeah,
She'll share it in the Slack.
If you don't mind, I can do that.
That's fine. I didn't think through, like, you don't want to share the actual presentation link. You want to share the PDF version, which is what I tend to do. So that's coming at you, Stacy. And if you'd like to come down to ask the question, we can have you, or I can just ask it for you. I didn't see a response, so I'll go ahead and ask for the sake of time. She also asked, can you address if there's a certain, wait, there's a new message. No, it was just.
She said she's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all you.
Is that okay to come or not? I'll just ask it. I don't want to not get consent. All right. So can you also address if there's a certain list size that advertisers are more interested in, or is it engagement, more engagement that matters? And then I'll ask the second part of her question after you address that.
Okay. So I don't think it matters list size. Engagement is obviously really important, but like I said, if you have the right audience, then the doesn't matter if it's 9K to 100K, they're going to be interested in the audience before the metrics.
Excellent. Okay. And then can Paved advise on how much to charge according to list size or engagement?
Yes, so we actually we have a whole blog on this, so I will get our marketing team to put this in the Slack. But essentially, we have a calculator. So when you, if you want to create a profile, and you'll be able to include your sponsorship price based on the open rate, CTR rate, and reach. We actually calculate what a general price you should be charging for your sponsorship.
Awesome. And so what factors go into that math? Is it a simple algorithm, or is it highly complex?
That is something I would have to double check with the blog post. I have that information right now.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm always curious, the math behind the calculator, right? How do we get to this number? What do we get to? All right, we have something in the Q&A. How far in the future does Paved allow advertisers to book in slots in advance? And is there an uplift in rates charged at peak times for times advertisers who want to align their content with certain events? For example, like a G20 summit or International Women's Day. And if you need me to break that into multiple small parts of a question, I can, because I feel like I forgot what the first part was.
Yeah, go with the first part again.
Okay, how far into the future does Paved allow advertisers to book slots in advance?
Oh, okay. So as far as in the future as the newsletter, each newsletter allows us to, we actually just launched a availability calendar, which I believe stretches across the rest of the year and into next year. So as far in advance as they want to go and as they are able to commit. And then the second part.
Okay, is there an uplift in rates charged at peak times for times advertisers who want to align their content with certain events, for example, G20 Summit, International Women's Day, those kinds of things? Are there peak advertising times?
Good question. I can't speak to that personally, but I would say if you're asking about peak, when it's a peak cost, I would say that's actually up to each newsletter individually. If they know that the G Summit is coming up, then they can increase or decrease their prices as and when. I hope I answered that.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's like having a vacation rental and knowing that during peak season you can charge more, right? Or Super Bowl Sunday ad has its price, right? So that's interesting to think about, how you might have varying rates based on your particular audience and when they might be most engaged. I would think that what you would want to do would be to kind of be able to prove year over year that people are more engaged at that time. Or if advertisers were fighting for the spots because of a certain event or something, then you could raise the rate just like you would with an auction or bidding or something, because right now is prime time for this audience to be able to capture this audience or something.
And what some newsletters can also do is have different placements, so different tiered placements. So you have like the top section, which is a higher cost than like section B, which is maybe placed at the bottom. So you can kind of play around with that. And again, like if you want to play it with peak times based on specific events, or just in general, like, you know, that Wednesdays are peak, so you only want to sell out then, like absolutely go for it.
So I have a question. I'm not seeing any more in the chat, but I have like a personal one. In terms of cadence, newsletters that are coming out like monthly versus fortnightly versus weekly versus daily, which ones are like, have you seen some of those cadences be more attractive to certain advertisers, subsects? Like, how does that splay out?
Good question. I would say, based on what I think is most popular, is weekly, if not bi-daily or something. In terms of advertisers, though, so some newsletters will offer like placement throughout the week to advertisers, and to some that's actually a great opportunity because they're getting like a whole week, and then you're working on a daily cadence, and maybe one day like Bob opens it and then the next day he doesn't, but Sarah does or something. So you're still getting the same audience, but you're saturating it a little bit. And I think that can be positive, but also some that will just have their bi-weekly or weekly newsletter, they'll also see a positive return on their ad space too. So it really depends on preferences and like how many touch points you want to have with your subscribers.
Got it. Do we have any more questions? I'm looking for any that I missed in the chat, Seth, because it got chatty.
It did get chatty. Yeah, I contributed to the problem. I was having a discussion with Rob, but I haven't seen any other questions come in. We have a few minutes left, so if there's any last minute questions, make sure to drop them in the Q&A so we can get them to Sonal. And yeah, we only have a few minutes left, so make sure to get those in quickly.
Okay.
Any last minute takers? Oh,
I saw something that was a thank you. Yes. So this has been a great discussion. I will say that this had more questions than some sessions. And that's exciting to me because that means conversation is happening. I'm trying to think if I have any, because I really value your time and that y'all joined us. And I'm so excited that you're here. So I think the thing I would love addressed is kind of, we assume there is an increased popularity in sponsoring newsletters with the increased popularity in creating newsletters. Is that a good assumption? Is that true? Like, what do you see in the newsletter sponsorship landscape going on right now in recent years? And what do you think will be happening?
It's a really good question. So to break it into a few bits. So what is happening right now is like, there is a huge buzz in people wanting to make newsletters. I think advertisers are understanding like how valuable an audience is for a newsletter. Like, you've opted in to receive this information. It's not like spammed in front of you unwantedly when you're scrolling like Instagram or on a display. So whether the sorry, I just saw another message. So the correlation between it, I would say, is pretty equal. And then if anything, in the next few years, I honestly think the newsletter space will just continue to increase. I know that there's a few kind of updates with Google, like losing their cookies and stuff. So how is that going to impact the newsletter space and make it grow even more? We've also seen like a few big players in the industry get acquired, like Morning Brew and the Hustle, I believe. Both got acquired by like huge brands and like are worth millions. So the more people are seeing this, the more they're going to want to go into the industry. But also advertisers are probably peaking like, there's definitely something here that we want to be a part of. So I would definitely think it's going to expand and not decrease over the next few years.
I like that as a trained journalist because it feels to me like a return to advertisers valuing the audience that good content can attract, right?
Oh,
which
definitely.
Feels like something
and like I was
go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, as like I was saying about the like native ads, like it gives, if you're seeing a banner ad, you're not getting anything from it. Like a native ad, I think, is an ode to like previous journalism where it's informative, it's actually useful. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, so then one last question before we wrap, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and this might get some wheels turning for some people. But I love that Ian's like, I just heard a new title today, head of demand gen, because I go to Chris Walker of Refine Labs hosts a Tuesday night session called Demand Gen Live, and it's like a Zoom meeting where he just answers questions. And one thing that he has been talking about recently is getting people to consume like content in the channel they're in, whether that's on Facebook or LinkedIn, et cetera, and kind of advising marketers to stop trying to get the click through to the landing page, like to take advantage of people where they are at and get the message you want them to consume to them in that channel versus sending them elsewhere. And I'm thinking a lot about how that applies to newsletters in some cases, even if it's a curated newsletter, but you're adding your commentary. It's almost like the link is there if they want to dive further. And I think that that's what native advertising can do in newsletters, is because you can get the brand's message in the content of something that's already being consumed. I wonder though, do advertisers see it this way, or are they still highly focused on clicks?
I would say right now, a lot of them are still focused on clicks and getting the conversions, because at the end of the day, what is fueling these budgets are those clicks and those products and those consumers getting the like the services that they're advertising. However, having said that, with the drive of native ads, there could be like a trickling of this mentality coming through, like wanting to actually care about what information is being shared about the product, or exactly like who the audience is. How can they leverage that against their product? Like what actually resonates best with this newsletter versus this newsletter, even though it's the same product, maybe it's completely different creative. So that's what I'm seeing a trend in across the board. It's like advertisers generally do want to get more out of the content that they're making. So also at the end of the day, they're putting time and resources into creating it. So why wouldn't they want it to be as the best it can be as a piece of art, let's say. But I'd say still the end goal is conversions, leads, etc.
Yeah. I wonder if that will. I'm curious to see how that plays out, because we talk a lot about things that aren't super easy to attribute, right? Like a podcast that then they go and Google, and so attribution goes to organic search or direct because you said the name of your website, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I'm interested in how that plays out with email, because I could see some advertisers just focusing on brand or education in their ads and still pumping money into that because they know that they can see the correlation between when we started advertising in these newsletters, direct went up. Like, because I could be reading that email and be like, oh, that's a new brand I've never heard of, but I'm not clicking through right now. But I understand like what it offers me in the reading of this email. And so they are top of mind when a week later, I'm like, I have a need for that thing I saw in the email last week. And I go to Google and I get there.
No,
so yeah. So it's interesting when you spend into brand, it's like harder to prove that it happened. So the newsletter creator still needs to focus on like what baseline click through can I help you achieve while still achieving brand, like as if it's gravy.
Oh yeah, 100%, definitely. I don't think though that the conversions or the monetary value of a newsletter or any advertising is going to go away anytime soon with advertisers, because at the end of the day, they've got to report their budgets, they've got to answer to their bosses, investors, like who knows? So yeah, very interesting.
All right. Well, we have had a blast. I don't see any last second questions. I am looking forward to future conversations around this topic. Join us in the Slack. Join us at the next session in 30 minutes. We're going to talk about where journalism and marketing meets and how they intersect and collide and what they borrow from each other with a huge panel of experts that I'm a little bit nervous about. So see you all in 30 minutes. And thank you so much, Sonal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. But last thing, Claire has dropped the PDF of the presentation in the Slack and the event discussion channel. So I went ahead and just a second ago, and I'll drop it again, the Slack link. So if you're looking for that PDF, just join the Slack and then go grab that PDF. You'll automatically be placed in that channel. So you'll be able to grab it super easily.
All right. And thanks, Ian, for dropping the Hairy Dry. He dropped a link in there that everyone's going to want to go check out. You might want to put that in the Slack newsletter resources too, because that's a great article about how he grew his newsletter to 38,000 subscribers. All right. See y'all later. Thank you.
And
Bye.
Rob did ask, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Rob did ask, where do we join the next session? So Rob,
go to newsletterfest.com, scroll to Friday, and you will find the registration for that one. Newsletterfest.com.
Yep. I just dropped it in chat. You can just grab that. All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Rob. Glad to have you.